Hello, hope you're having a nice day. Larkham gave some food for thought while covering the changes to the Mustang in the Australian Supercars Championship, seen in this clip linked in the description. I'm going to encourage you to watch these, because copyright strikes are like lightning, random and violent if they do hit. Two things stand out. First of all, either these cars are changing overall drag levels significantly on a track-by-track basis, or the downforce numbers we're getting from the broadcast are bunk. If the numbers we get here are spot on, the Gen 3 supercars have a CLA, that's coefficient of lift multiplied by the car's frontal area, of about 1.1. But the data from the bend in this video, link in the description, gives us a CLA of more like 0.8, which is a pretty huge difference in downforce, about 30%. Here's some data for the airfoil the Dodge Charger Daytona used, which in terms of airfoil shape is an apt enough comparison. See how little drag changes over 5 degrees of angle? Since the wings are pretty flat in supercars and are allowed such a small maximum angle, there's not much of a benefit of backing it off for lower drag. So I'm going to chalk this up to a rounding error or simplification for the broadcast. Larko, what does he know? Mitre 10 Falcon? Never heard of it. But that's just a neat little aside compared to the meat of this clip. The adjustment is all about the Ford's aero bounce, but there's no point bringing it up if there isn't something weird to talk about. All the motivation to make this video came from a few simple numbers. 70 kg front downforce, 140 kg rear at 200 km an hour. That's a 33% aero bounce, which is absurd for a front engine chassis based on a 4-seater car. The insanity gets backed up by hard numbers when we look at the rules. Weight distribution is mandated to be at least 55% front without fuel. That'll come back a little bit on a full tank, but even with 130 litres of E75 over the rear axle, which it's not, the fuel tank is ahead of the axle, that's 93 kilos back there, which gives something close to a 50-50 weight distribution. At a generous estimate, the aero balance is miles away from the weight distribution. Now I've just slandered the accuracy of the broadcast figures, but I do think they're rooted in reality, just imprecise. Nobody really cares to the decimal how much downforce these cars are producing unless they have a job on the pit wall. And if they do, hopefully they aren't getting their data from the broadcast. So if we use these numbers and consider the parity changes, it gets weird. The Mustang has lost front downforce through some minor tweaks, and gained a wider rear wing, mounted up higher, moved further back, with more angle. I'm an educational YouTube channel, they're always well researched and thoughtful, so I'm not about to start lying by pretending I've got CFD in my eyes and feed all kinds of theories. But what I will wager is that the total downforce isn't changing a bit, and that the Camaro and Mustang are pretty equal in outright figures, so it's fascinating how sensitive the front is to aero tweaks. I'd expect the teams to maximise downforce and try and make the car live with it. Downforce is grip after all, so even if the balance is negatively affected, if you can maximise downforce, it's worth it. You can always adjust the balance in other ways afterwards. But this isn't that. Outright downforce isn't changing, this parity change to the Mustang will just push the balance further backwards, which I'd expect would make the car worse to drive, especially for top tier racing drivers who can put up with an unstable car. Yet this adjustment is to help the car. Why?
Remember,
I think the name of the game is maximising the outside rear wheel. The spool not differential means the car doesn't want to turn. To get around that, the teams run a high rear roll stiffness, creating a lot of lateral load transfer between the rear wheels, giving more grip to the front. Compounding that, they'll reduce the distance the rear wheels can droop, so in a corner, the inside wheel hangs in the air when you combine braking and turning, reminiscent of a front-wheel drive touring car setup. Just for a little added bonus, any caster angle will create crossweight and add load on the front inside and rear outside wheel, for more load that works into improving turning. With the car tripoding into corners, suddenly the changes make sense. On corner entry, the inside wheel getting unloaded means it'll turn in like an open differential. There's suddenly way less resistance to changing direction, and the rearward aero bounces to support that lone outside rear tyre. On throttle on corner exit, weight transfers backwards, both wheels are back on the deck, and then there's this neat little tool to reduce understeer called the V8 engine. Doing this works the rear tyres hard, they're either taking a huge amount of load single-handedly, or being slipped as they fight the spool to change direction on corner exit. Way back at the first round in Newcastle, V8 Sleuth has a quote from Dunlop's motorsport manager, Kevin Fitzsimmons. He says if the tyres were cooler and the temps were harder, they all would have been understeering. I think that checks out. And additionally, whenever tyre drop-off gets mentioned, it's all about protecting the rear tyres, with a lot of focus on throttle application. So what initially seems like a bizarre way to balance and improve the car actually makes a lot of sense when you consider the limitations. Now, parity talk is ugly enough without pouring on more fuel with my opinions from the Dunning-Kruger school of thought, but I'd like to give Supercar some praise. There's a reason NASCAR gives the OEMs a very fixed body shelter style, and even then we see that Ford missed the mark with their work compared to Chevrolet and Toyota for most of the season, although Blaney winning the championship has made that a little less obvious. Given the supercars are so different looking, it's no surprise it's taking some time to match them up, especially once you let teams exploit their nuances. So thanks for watching, remember to subscribe to Boost and Ethanol, and goodbye.